Thank you very much. I assure you, we value young scientists, lots of professors around the table, and our valuation also expressed by having you, and we want to stay in touch with you in the future. Colleagues, we have overrun our program by about half an hour. I would like to suggest that we have a discussion of the presentation by Dr. Tolu Oni. Tomorrow we have not such a packed program, chaired then by Martin Rees. And I suggest we have a bit of cross-cutting discussion tomorrow, Martin, where we have 2 lectures less than today. So I ask you to hold your cross-cutting comments to tomorrow. And at this point in time, focus on what you have heard from Dr. Oni. I see a few hands up, virtual and physical hands up. Salvador Moncada, you have the floor. You need to unmute yourself.
Now?
Yes.
Well, congratulations, Dr. Oni, for that presentation. I really appreciate what you have said and what you have emphasized. This is something that I was trying to say yesterday in terms of the approach to this problem, and is that we continue, even now, concentrating on curative medicine rather than preventive medicine. And if we talk about preventive medicine, we are talking about an array of measures that are not strictly related to health, but are related to socioeconomical background and climate and so on, which would be important to maintain the population healthy, should be in the future the most important objective of our health problem. Remember that if you are thinking about this pandemic, which is very painful and it has really shaken everybody, if you compare the number of deaths with the number of deaths that you have in relation to cardiovascular disease in the world, in 2017, 70 million people die from cardiovascular disease in the world, and 70% of those died in the low and middle income countries already. I was saying that these countries have acquired the diseases of the rich, which are killing more people than the diseases of the first world. If you talk about cancer, which is one of the others, about 9.5 million people died in 2017, and 75% of those occurred in low and middle income countries. So we have to talk about prevention. We have to talk about the situation in general of society that creates a climate in which maintaining the population healthy is the most important thing. We also heard from Dr. Hassan about health and climate change. And we know that there are very important connections there that should be addressed also. So when I was asked to give my lecture, I started to talk about receptors of angiotensin. And slowly I realized that there are issues which are much, much bigger that have to be addressed if we are going to talk about a health population in general and maintaining the world in a healthy situation. And in that respect, I would like to express my worries about the fact that, for example, the National Academy of Sciences has a partnership with Google in which Google makes the decisions of what kind of information is given which priority. And that is, I think, a very dangerous path when we are giving the opportunity to a private company so powerful to make this type of decision.
Yeah, we had covered that. Dr. Oni, a comment on the comment?
No, I think that's from the prevention side, that's absolutely critical. A lot of my work, as I said, is on urban epidemiology and invariably focused on preventing NCDs very often. It's really, just to add to that point, that's why I left that slide in, even though I was over, around the challenges and the barriers to acting with a sense of urgency. And it really is just the parallels I wanted to draw between the COVID actions and the broader systemic threats to human and planetary health we face is, on one hand, the kinds of things that have been demonstrated as possible, the level of trans-border and intersectoral collaborations that have been demonstrated as possible for COVID on one hand. She fills one with hope. On the other hand, the critical thing I grapple with on day-to-day is, how do we retain this urgency? We're all talking about a new norm, post-normal. That's not going to happen by default. Just because we've gone through this does not mean we change things, because it's always a little bit more uncomfortable to address those fundamental shifts that need to happen. So yeah, so it's that sense of urgency. And maybe just the one point that I didn't make, which is around the role of funding the kinds of science that we need. And I think we do also need to recognize that in this discomfort of our day-to-day discomfort, the funding of science, we need to get a little bit more uncomfortable with the kinds of science that we fund, like we have done for COVID and the incredible advances that have been made. You know, if you compare it to advances in tuberculosis and the funding that's gone into tuberculosis, you know, it's just, it pales in comparison. So if we are serious about thinking about addressing these systemic threats to human and planetary health, we do have to turn the mirror a little bit on ourselves as a science society and think about the kinds of science that we fund and the kinds of risks that we're willing to take in order to really think differently and have science advances. Thank you.
Dr. Oni, Andrew Kambugu thanks you for your talk and asks, do you have some thoughts on the role of African-based institutions in bringing about better planetary health? Can you be specific on this one?
I have a lot of thoughts on that and a lot of action as well.
Just give us some specifics. African institutions.
Yes. So I mean,
bringing about planetary health.
Yeah. So I didn't go into details, but in the fleshing out of the Marshall Plan and putting that into action, what we're doing at the moment is thinking not just partnership, importantly, with different academic institutions. I mean, I'm still an honorary associate professor at the University of Cape Town, so I'm still very much in Africa, if you like. But additional academic institutions, but also recognizing the kinds of research that I do is transdisciplinary, which means engaging not just with diverse disciplines, but with broader societal actors. So we're partnering with different city government representatives who are keen to look at the roles that science can play in rethinking strategies for resilience for the human and the environment. Also having conversations with different funding structures. So getting behind, so urban development is happening very rapidly. A lot of it is not being funded by governments, but by the private sector. So we're starting to engage with those institutions to say, well, how can we actually realign the incentives? And this is where the kinds of science that I do comes in. How can we realign incentives that fund and finance and invest in and the cities that are being grown as spaces for creation of health, not just as an afterthought. So there's some of that work happening at the moment.
That's important, yes. I would also point to the about 20 very active national academies of science in Africa, the consortium of the 16 research universities, which are strong institutions all over Africa.
And the national young academies across Africa as well.
And never forget the young ones.